Hi everyone, welcome back to our round room of theory. Today we are opening 3 more windows: minority criticism, religious or sacred criticism, and Marxist criticism. Please do not panic. We are not trying to become professional philosophers before lunch. We are simply learning 3 new ways to ask better questions. Think of theory like a set of glasses. You already have your own reaction to a book, a painting, a museum, or a city street. Maybe you love it. Maybe you are confused by it. Maybe you feel a little suspicious of it and cannot yet explain why. Theory helps you slow down and ask, what exactly am I noticing here? What structure is underneath this first reaction? Remember our round room metaphor. The scene inside the room does not change. What changes is the window you choose. When you stand at one window, you notice one set of patterns. When you move to another window, the same scene looks different. Neither window is the one true window. The goal is to learn how to move around the room. Our 3 windows today each ask a different central question. Minority criticism asks, whose voice counts? Religious or sacred criticism asks, what gives life meaning here? Marxist criticism asks, who has money, labor, access, and power? Those questions are simple on purpose. If you remember nothing else from this video, remember those 3 questions. Whose voice counts? What gives life meaning? Who has power and resources? Let's begin with minority criticism. Minority criticism looks at how dominant cultures represent people they consider different. It asks who is treated as normal, who is treated as foreign or exotic, whose knowledge is valued, and whose experience gets pushed to the margins. This matters because texts, museums, maps, tours, and even city streets do not simply show reality. They frame reality. They tell us where to look, whom to trust, and whose version of the story seems official. 2 thinkers help us with this lens. Edward Said showed how Western culture often describes the non-Western world as exotic, irrational, primitive, or inferior. That matters because representation is never just decoration. The way a group is described can shape how people treat that group in real life. Gloria Anzaldúa gives us the idea of the borderlands. A borderland is not just a line on a map. It is also a psychological and cultural space where people have to navigate more than one language, more than one identity, and more than one set of expectations at the same time. So when you use minority criticism, you might ask, who is constructed as the other? Who gets to speak with authority? Whose language appears and whose language disappears? Who is described by someone else, but never gets to explain themselves? Here is a very practical example. Imagine a museum label, a tour guide, or a textbook explaining a community's history without including that community's own voice. A first reading might say, this is informative. A minority criticism lens asks, informative according to whom? Who is being explained? Who is doing the explaining? And who is missing from the conversation? That is the kind of question you can bring to Barcelona. When you walk through the Gothic Quarter, when you listen to a tour, when you see Catalan, Spanish, English, and tourist language layered over each other, ask yourself, whose history is being told here? Whose history has to fight harder to be seen? This lens is not asking whether you personally are religious. You do not have to believe a particular thing in order to use this lens well. Sacred criticism asks how people create meaning, how communities mark certain spaces or stories as deeply important, and what happens when those meanings are challenged. In other words, this lens asks, what is sacred here? What story explains where people come from or why life matters? Who gets to guard that story? And what happens when a new idea threatens it? Mircea Eliade helps us think about sacred and profane space. Profane space is ordinary space. Sacred space is set apart. It becomes charged with meaning through worship, pilgrimage, memory, ritual, architecture, music, silence, or community belief. A mountain can become sacred. A church can become sacred. A painting can become sacred. Even a moment can become sacred if people experience it as carrying meaning beyond itself. René Girard helps us think about how communities sometimes manage fear or conflict by directing blame onto a scapegoat. That can be a person, a group, or an idea that gets treated as the cause of the community's anxiety. So when you use a religious or sacred lens, you might ask, where is sacred space in this example? What origin story is being protected? Who speaks for the sacred? What new knowledge threatens the story people have built their lives around? In origin, this is a huge issue. Edmund Kirsch's discovery is not just a scientific announcement. It challenges origin stories that billions of people use to make sense of existence. For people whose faith answers the question, where do we come from? Kirsch's discovery can feel like a threat to the entire framework of meaning. In Barcelona, you will see this lens everywhere. Think of Sagrada Familia. Think of Montserrat. Think of people walking into a space and becoming quieter without anyone telling them to. That shift matters. The building is doing something to the body. It is teaching people how to behave in the presence of meaning. A sacred lens can help you notice that a place is not just beautiful. It can be a site of reverence, conflict, memory, tourism, belief, money, and all at once. And yes, this is where things get interesting, because a place can be sacred and also commercial. It can be prayerful and also crowded with phone cameras. Human beings are complicated. Barcelona will remind us of that approximately every 12 seconds. Now let's move to our third window, Marxist criticism. Marxist criticism does not mean every assignment suddenly becomes an economics report. It means we follow material power. We ask who owns what, who has access, who performs labor, who profits, and what systems make inequality look normal. Karl Marx helps us see that economic structures shape everything else: politics, culture, religion, art, and everyday life. He also helps us understand ideology, which is the set of beliefs that makes a social arrangement feel natural, even when it was built by people and benefits some people more than others. Antonio Gramsci gives us the idea of hegemony. Hegemony is power that does not always need to shout. It works by making the values of the powerful seem like common sense. If everyone accepts the rules as normal, the system can keep running without looking like force. Pierre Bourdieu gives us cultural capital. Cultural capital is not just money. It is the knowledge, confidence, education, taste, and social fluency that allow someone to move easily through elite spaces. That is a powerful idea for this course. Some people walk into museums, universities, royal palaces, and fancy restaurants as if they belong there. Other people hesitate, even if they are just as intelligent. Marxist criticism asks, who was trained to feel at home in this space? Who was not? So when you use a Marxist lens, ask, who has resources? Whose labor makes this world possible? Who profits? What is being sold? What inequality is being hidden by beauty, comfort, or good manners? In origin, Edmund Kirsch is brilliant, but he is also a billionaire. That matters. His money gives him access to institutions, technology, privacy, time, and authority. Brilliance gets much louder when it has a billionaire sound system. In Barcelona, a Marxist lens helps us look underneath the polished surface. A museum is beautiful, but who cleans it? A tourist district feels lively, but who can afford to live there? A perfect dinner appears at the table, but whose labor made that ease possible? The point is not to stop enjoying beautiful things. The point is to see the labor and power arrangements that make beauty available to some people and not to others. Now, here's where the real work begins. You are not going to write about all three theories equally in your notebook entry. Please do not try to summarize the whole novel, the whole city, and the entire history of capitalism in 300 words. That is not a notebook entry. That is a cry for help. Instead, you will choose one concrete detail, one phrase, one object, one setting, one action, one silence, one pattern, something you can actually point to. Then you will choose one primary lens. That lens gives you your main idea. It is the paragraph you develop. After that, you will add one second lens. The second lens does not replace your first idea. It adds pressure to it. It complicates it. It helps you say, yes, this is about voice, but it is also about money. Or yes, this is about sacred meaning, but it is also about who profits from sacred space. Let me give you the whole move in miniature. Imagine your concrete detail is a guided description of a neighborhood that speaks about residents without letting residents speak for themselves. Your primary lens could be minority criticism. Through a minority lens, this detail reveals that authority is being claimed by outsiders rather than by the people whose history is being told. Then your second lens might be Marxist criticism. A second lens complicates this because tourism and money also help decide whose version of the neighborhood becomes visible and profitable. That is not a huge argument. It is not a finished essay. But it is a strong beginning because it is specific, focused, and layered. So now we are moving from lecture into workshop. Your job is to leave class with 6 things. 1 concrete detail, 1 primary lens, 1 working claim, 1 second lens sentence, 1 AI question, and 125 to 175 words of draft material. Your AI question should help you think more carefully. It should not ask AI to write the entry for you. A useful question might sound like this. How might minority criticism help me understand this museum label without reducing it to a simple mistake? Or how might Marxist criticism help me understand this tourist space without reducing it to just money? The first move is not to sound brilliant. The first move is to notice something specific. Once you notice clearly, the thinking can begin.